Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ET HR World and Great Learning webinar on upskilling employees in tech sector, a strategic approach. Technology is changing at the speed of light and the pace of demand. So new and advanced skills are equivalent to it. The gap between the demand and supply of skilled talent is further widened by the lack of adaptability among professionals in the IT/ITS sector. To help us understand the need of continuous upskilling and why it is imperative to invest in the learning of the workforce, we have with us eminent leaders from the technology industry. Please welcome Shrikant Kara, CHRO Emphasis, Dr. Vishwanath Joshi, CPO Hexaware Technologies, Maya Srikumar, Global L&D Strategist Cognizant, Shraddhanjali Rao, VP HR, SAP India. We also have the opportunity to hear from the head of enterprise business at Great Learning. The company is expanding possibilities and skilling in the field of technology for working professionals by tying up with world-class universities. So we welcome Ritesh from Great Learning. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you all with us. I would now like to welcome the audience too. Thank you for being here. We'll be running a brief Q&A at the end of the webinar. The Ask a Question feature is on the right-hand side of your screen. If you have any questions, just type it in there. And if you miss anything, don't worry. The recording of the webinar will be available on the HR World website for future reference. With experts from the industry present here, it is a prime interest to hear from them how the technology landscape is changing and impacting the skill sets of the workforce. Shrikant, why don't you share your views on that?
Thank you, Pooja, and thanks, audience, for taking time off to attend this webinar and my fellow speakers here. So we've heard a lot about this retraining, reskilling, reorienting our employees to the new world, the digital world as it's popularly called, and so on and so forth. So what is this whole thing all about? I mean, what is this? Is it true? What's this mystery, or what is this whole game all about? And let's try to explain it in simple words at a very high level. Fundamentally, the so-called digital world, the onset of the digital world in the last 3 to 4 years, debatably 3-4 years, has been on 3 vectors. Vector number 1, obviously, technology, the technology skills. Number 2 is the process by which the digital world is being designed or made or architected and so on and so forth. And the third one is the soft skills, right? Most of our employees, what soft skills do they really, what do they have in the legacy world, and what is it that's going to change? The way I see it, and I expect my fellow speakers to also chip in. So let's take each of those vectors. Number 1, technology. Those who have been working in the IT sector know that the so-called legacy technologies were dominated by what you call the mainframes, client server, and on-premise applications, right? We used to have these application developments done on our servers locally, and we used to have the any kind of a development or any kind of maintenance being done at the on-premise locations. That's completely moved, and actually moving at a very, very rapid pace to what you call the cloud infrastructure, cloud native application development, cloud migrations, and so on and so forth. I just read about a couple of days back that across the globe, only about 25% to 30% of the organizations have moved to the cloud. So you can imagine cloud is the way things are going to happen. Everything is going to happen to the cloud. The ERPs of the world, the databases of this world, everything is going to move to the cloud. That's number 1 on technology, which is the biggest change. And of course, data proliferation. With the number of interfaces that we have today, obviously the the iPhones, or rather what you call the mobile phones, laptops, the iPads, and mobile devices, plus the in-premise applications which we are all used to, the kind of data proliferation that's happening is phenomenal. So there's a lot of intelligence out there, which now popularly the most touted words AI and machine learning are used. It's fundamentally how do you nurture this data and make sense and make some kind of a decisions out of this data. That's a huge area which is being proliferating. User interfaces, I already talked about it. But more importantly, how does the user experience evolve in terms of the interfaces with the devices? So you have the UI UX, another technology which is evolving at a very fast pace, and the least but not the least, cybersecurity. With the multi-point device touch points, it's a nightmare for for a cybersecurity officer in a company. What kind of a data is coming in? What is the you heard about cyber attacks and so on and so forth, which is only multiplying. And post COVID, there's an old joke which goes, who really helped digitization fast, the CIO, the CTO, the CEO, or is it COVID? We have noticed in the last 6 months, COVID has really actually accelerated the whole digital process, and it is literally the very fact that we're using the Zooms and web-based interfaces by itself shows this has become the way of the work tomorrow. So that's technology. Number two is process. Very quickly, the old software development methodology was all about the waterfall methods. It was like an assembly workshop. Somebody designs, somebody architects, somebody codes, somebody else tests, somebody else takes the product to the market. Not anymore. In fact, you open your iPhone or your any of the mobile phone, every day there's a code drop happening at a daily pace, at a regular pace. Literally 3 to 4 codes or 3 to 4 fixes are happening to your applications on an ongoing basis. That's what you call the agile methodologies, or what we call DevOps methodologies. So old waterfall methodologies to agile and DevOps methodologies. That's a huge change, big shift. And last but not least, the soft skills. The old communication skills, flow charting still remain popular, but the three main important skills from my point of view is solutioning, design thinking, and architecting. So these are some fundamental shifts on these three vectors. That's where I stop, and that's the motion. Now that's where we really in the IT sector want to reskill the legacy skills, as we call the skills I talked before, to these new skills is the endeavor that we're all undertaking. And that's where I hand over to the others touch upon it. Thank you.
Thank you, Shrikant, for enlightening us, especially people like me who are from media, who really, don't understand technology. Um, any other panelists would want to pitch in here and share something?
Yeah, I just want to connect what Shrikant said. As we see it, there are four abilities which are directly connecting to the kind of changes that we are experiencing. One is, of course, the ability, which is your technical ability to do the job. Second, as we see it, is your flexibility, because the speed at which things are changing, the context of performance is changing. I think flexibility is going to be a very, very important factor. Third is, and which is where Shrikant talked about soft skills, I'm glad he brought that in. The third is really learnability, because as with the speed of change, the expectation on speed of learning is also changing. So ability, your flexibility, your learnability, and fourth, all the more with all the changes happening, I think there is a very, very significant need to develop another ability that I like to call get along ability, because you never know on whose project you will be, what kind of team composition you could be working on, and the speed with which you are expected to adapt to working with different people whom you've probably never seen before. So in the way I see it, based on also my organizational experience and generally what I study and research around, your technical ability, your flexibility, your learnability, and your get along ability are going to be the key drivers to the success, both at an individual as well as at a collective level. So I just wanted to bring an element of what will be required to adapt in this changing environment.
Thank you, Vishwanath, for this. So now let's, technologies are changing, the workplace is changing. All this is leaving gaps, knowledge gaps. Are we scaling at the same speed? So what are the knowledge gaps you see in your organization? What have been the creative innovations that you have implemented in your organization? So let's start this with Maya.
Hey, thanks, Pooja. Thanks, everybody, for this opportunity. So I would say that when it comes to large organizations like Cognizant or any of the large technology organizations, see, if you take us, we have around 250,000 technology workforce. So upskilling at scale becomes the biggest problem statement in front of us. And if you take this 250,000 workforce, And take any of the competitor organizations, they'll have similar, lot of background noise. Um, so if you take any of these organizations, you can segmentize the workforce into the ones that are in digital business, right? The ones who work on analytics and IoT and data science, product engineering, all of them we call as the digital business workforce. And then you have the enterprise application products like SAP, Oracle, we have Shraddha here. You know, the kind of skilling required for Salesforce and Pega and all of that, right? The product area. Then the skilling required for the legacy modernization workforce, which is Java, .NET, React.js, Angular, all of that, right? Which is development and maintenance, but not the front-ending new technology. So the upskilling approach for all the three towers will differ. And I used to be in business-facing role for almost 16 years before I moved to L&D. And this, the whole transformation of upskilling or learning and development itself has changed in our organization. So one of the best practice that I would call out is looking upskilling from a demand fulfillment perspective, which means earlier skilling used to be like, okay, everybody needs to elevate themselves to a level of digital awareness or a digital knowledge, then build a depth on the technology and process that Shrikant said. But what we did was, like almost 3 years back, is let's see how we can look at skilling from a demand fulfillment angle. So see it from a demand supply chain standpoint, which was like a radical shift from a learning and development standpoint, right? Because we went to the business and said that we are ready to be measured. We want to be measured on the ROI that we provide. So we did the skilling in three we looked at it in three different ways. One is skilling for a demand fulfillment, which is short-term demand. If there is a demand for a set of skills, which any organization would know, have that chart kind of created, and every other day you will have to look at what are the new things coming from a demand. And at an organizational level, we have a skilling called as skilling for demand fulfillment, which we call as skill to deploy, which is done at an organization level. So where we look at resources across the organization and look at the demand and try to skill for that. The outcome is measured based on how many requests you fulfill, how many demand requests you are able to fulfill. And the second is skilling towards a readiness, which means you are again based on a demand in specific towers. So this is not done at an org level, but this is done at a tower level. So if HANA, SAP HANA or Hybris or the new areas that are required in SAP, then build a set of workforce as a pipeline towards that readiness. Which is the same that would happen in a Salesforce or in a full stack engineering. Build a pipeline, and they might not move into a demand very soon. You're building a pipeline towards a 4 or 6 months demand. So the skill to deploy and this skill towards readiness, a supply pipeline readiness, will only be a 30% of the workforce. So what will you do with the rest of them? They also need to be upskilled. That's where we said they are very aspirational learners. Any technology company you take, everybody wants to work on analytics or IoT or the cutting edge. So we said we will give them a highway where they can pick up the skills they want. And it could be cloud computing, it could be analytics, it could be anything. I might be working on mainframe, but I could pick a new skill in IoT. And if I am really driven, motivated, and to do that, we are giving them the path. So that's we call it as the skill to choice, basically. So all the three became kind of a terminology that we use from a strategic perspective, saying that every skilling that we do in the organization has to be either for a short-term demand, which need to be measured through a fulfillment, or ready for a demand in a build a supply pipeline, or ready for a future, and which you need to pull and do. The 70% will have to pull and do. So these are the key best practice. One more I would add is, in addition to this, you should have a very strong job rotation program. Skilling strategies are not truly from a skilling perspective, right? And I'm not even touching the ecosystem that you need to have from content and from hands-on and proficiency building, certifications. All that is a given. I think with the kind of models that exist in the world, you can build that architecture, which I call as a learning architecture, where anybody can pull and learn from anywhere. The days of having a content being made available through enterprise is gone. You can search and learn on your own. So provided that hygiene is there, it's all about having a very strong rotation program as well, where somebody has completed 2 years or 2.5 years in a specific project or a skill, they need to pull new set of skills and say that, okay, I want to do this, and so you need to show your readiness. So shift the accountability to the employee, where they need to feel that they need to be rotated into new areas. So I would say these are some of the big shift, radical shift best practices that we have done.
Thank you, Maya.
Doing, at least attempting to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Maya. I really like anticipating tomorrow's demand and preparing today with those skills. I found that very interesting. Shraddhanjali, over to you, please.
All right. I think a lot has been spoken by Srikanth, Vishwanath, as well as Maya. Tech skill gaps are understandable. We all represent tech industry. So no matter, let me call this out, no matter what I teach you today will literally be irrelevant in probably 5-7 years, if I'm being aspirational, right? So one of the key things that I have to teach you is to learn. And to learn not just in theory, but to apply. I think that's the knot we need to tighten. And that's, let me call out 3 practices that we at SAP, right? At the end, we're a product company. So my strength lies with the people that I have in the organization. If they are not at the top of their game, I'm not going to be able to bring out something that's going to make sense for my customers. So it has to be real time. It has to be driven and motivationally driven also by the individual. That's a fundamental career change, right? It's a cultural nuance that we are trying to develop. Let me give you 3 examples. One, we had something called a techno school. Now, it's not a school run by HR. It's actually a learning academy run by business leaders and experts. It was launched with the objective to encourage employees for future-ready skills, like Maya spoke about, right? The aspirational groups of machine learning, artificial intelligence, cloud-native development, also aligned to where SAP as an organization want to go, but enabling. And it is not just classroom learning. It's hardcore boot camps. They have to get into cohorts, get their hands dirty, really go in, build prototypes and demos. So that's very, very extensive. But what's interesting is this does not sit within HR capability at all. So this is something that is found as a need within the community, within the organization run by business. That's one. Second, I think Vishwanath mentioned about having a platform or a talent marketplace. We have a platform at SAP where anybody, any employee across the world has an opportunity to see what are the opportunities in the organization and can raise their hand to participate. This could be on top of their work, right? So a flexible fellowship, a technical work, a shadowing, a thought leadership, an innovation, a business event, any of this. And what this allows for people to do is really call out, what would I like to do? So you are in the driving seat and you decide your regular scope of work is fine, but if you want to stretch, this is how you can go about doing it. What we've also done is we've incentivized or recognized and appreciated those efforts. So then it becomes natural in people's career aspirations to wanting to do that. The third one I think I want to highlight, which is again very close to us, the tech community, is something called SAP DevX. It's a monthly 60-minute connect of the best in breed people in technology, product, coming together. And it's not just internal. We really get the market experts to come and talk. I think Srikanth spoke about it. This move to cloud, which is taking all of us by the storm. And I think we need to ride that wave. So you really need an external perspective to come in. We even partnered with IISc to come and teach us how to write tech papers. Right? Again, that's how you build patent knowledge. That's how you build the technical capability. So not learning just because it's a band-aid and requirement for today, doing it along, tying it to the aspiration, tying it to the ownership, and tying it to the business value it will generate for the organization. 5,000 plus employees participating in hundreds of hours of technical training. This is just a number from the last month. So that's what we would like to highlight. I think we've put in structures in place, both as platforms, as opportunities, and of course, content today is the king, right? You have that everywhere. So make it really democratize learning, and that's been our principle, Pooja.
Thank you, Shraddhanjali, for sharing your innovative activities in the organization. Vishwanath, over to you.
Yes, and that's the most interesting part of being on forums like this, that we get to learn from each other. So I think one practice that I have seen at Hexaware. And of course, this was even before I came into Hexaware. Hexaware actually has a university called Hexavarsity, and it's a fully functional. It's headed by a chief learning officer and has an amazing, passionate team of learning professionals, both on the soft skills as well as on the technical skills side. Hexavarsity has a framework, and I found that framework very interesting, very intriguing. And now we're trying to strengthen that framework. That framework actually defines for every person a career growth path. I'm sure all of us will agree it's easier said than done. And that growth path is supported by a very well clearly defined programs or a set of programs. We call it Evolve. Now, that's one practice that I thought is a good, and I think that's the way to go forward, is to integrate three elements in an employee life cycle. One is learning, second is performance, and third is career. And therefore, even from a practical perspective, I find that organizations like Hexaware, like SAP, Cognizant, of course, Emphasis has also done something interesting in that area, I know, is to put all these three elements together and then say that this is really how learning and development is at the heart and core of. Now, one change that I definitely find, and I think companies like Hexaware also need to do better, is to bring in what Maya just said, which is integrating learning with change. And 25 years back, I learned this in one of my first MBA programs, where they said that learning is a tool for change. Now, after 25 years, I'm actually seeing it in action in many companies, including Hexaware. So if there is one thing that the audience would like to take away from me on best practices, I think you must come and look at our Evolve framework and how Hexavarsity drives that framework and contributes real time to building talent in the organization.
Thank you, Vishwanath, for that. Thank you for these insights. Shrikant, over to you. Shrikant, you're mute.
Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, I was just saying that most of the speakers have already covered the critical areas. In Emphasis, we kind of took a slightly different approach, a bit of a radical approach in terms of, one is, of course, as Shraddhanjali said, it's a platform. We call it Talent Next. We used what we preach to the choir. In other words, we use a lot of technology to hyper-personalize. I think Maya talked about it, but we didn't necessarily democratize it for the simple reason. We use the basic algorithms to personally profile an individual and say what training in his career ladder suits him. I keep taking my favorite example of a testing guy. No point, as Maya said, him learning Hadoop or R programming. For a testing guy, the automation of testing is Selenium, for example. So this automated engine, it's like a Netflix of learning. That's what I like to call it. By the time I called it, everybody started talking about it. So I stopped using this word. But it's a kind of a Netflix of learning where it personalizes the training program, and we curated close to about 7,000 skills at a very varied skill levels. And the most important thing that we did is we believe it's not a learning ecosystem only anymore. It's an HR ecosystem. This is where the departure is. What I mean by HR ecosystem is you pay for learning. So we really linked up. We are kind of slowly moving away from the traditional performance management system to what we call learning quotient. How many skills at what pace do you learn, and therefore incentivize the learning, and link it also to the productivity, which is equally important, which is the demand-based skilling, as Maya talked about. So the skills are obviously, number one, demand-led, and two, personalized. That is an individual's profile-led. So this AI algo in the Talent Next platform is a key. So it pushes the training, whether it's soft skills or process training, to where the gaps are, automatically identify the gaps based on the person's resume, and pushes the training. We also gamified it. That's an important point. Gamification for the fun of it. Everybody likes competition. I like to see the leaderboard and see who's the guy who's learning more learning coins. We took a tip from Bitcoin, and who's accumulating more learn coins, and learn coins are automatically converted into money, hard cash. So put your money where your mouth is. That's what the belief is. So yeah, these are some innovations we have done, and it's taken off extremely well, giving us good ROI in terms of higher billing rates or better revenues and better deployment.
Thank you, Shrikant. Ritesh, you would like to share something, or should we move to the next question?
No, so I have some thoughts on this
Sure.
point of gaps as well as innovations. See, we are in being an EdTech organization, we are in a very interesting position where all of these thoughts flow into us regularly, right? Both from a demand point of view and from an advisory or a consulting point of view. So we are, in a way, in the midst of this conundrum of how do we identify the right skills and how do we impart the right sort of training to people. And we've realized that there are three areas, and I speak on behalf of the EdTech industry, not necessarily as Great Learning. I think one of the first gaps that we realize is what Shrikant touched upon, which was this whole industry is going through a transformation of traditional skills are moving towards more digital skills, right? Now, each IT organization in their quarterly results will talk about how digital revenue is going up. Now, at the back of it, there is a lot of smart people working really hard to ensure that these organizations have the right digital skills. So one gap area we realize is this definition of digital skills, what sort of programs, what sort of content sits behind it. So we spend a lot of time working with top universities in the world on identifying those. Right? What is the most cutting edge curriculum and topics that are relevant for people on the digital side? So I think that's one gap that we realize, and we are working really hard to solve that and innovate in that area on curriculums and programs. The second that I realize, having spent considerable amount of time myself in the IT industry, is this whole definition of job roles, right? Now, just to give you an example, if you talk about tech skills and data skills like AI, machine learning, big data, or tech skills like cloud, DevOps, full stack, right? Just the number of job roles within each of these would inundate you. There would be, I would say, between these six categories, there would easily be some 60 job roles that exist. And the interpretation of those job roles across organizations and across the industry varies, right? So think about a country like India, where we have close to 8 lakh engineers graduating every year, and all of them having the option of these job roles, but how clear are they in terms of what skills and what talent do they develop to fit into these job roles, right? So I think that's the other big gap that we see, and we're working hard to solve that. From an innovation point of view, we spend quite a bit of energy on trying to figure out what sort of tools, technologies, what sort of concepts, and what sort of project work can we impart to learners to ensure that they're ready for these job roles, right? So that's the second gap that we realize and how we're trying to fix it. The third aspect is what Maya and Shraddha talked about, which is more about, the ways of learning in the world are changing now, right? We often hear about millennials' attention spans are shortening. So how do you engage them? How do you ensure that they're actually learning? So, all of us in the tech space are spending quite a bit of energy trying to innovate on our platforms, trying to make them more engaging. Even the way we've taught traditionally has changed over the last 3 years within the tech space. Yeah? We are a very young industry, but in the last 3 years, that has also changed dramatically. So if I talk about an area like full stack, a lot of our focus on full stack goes in terms of not just the concepts or video content, but a lot of hands-on practice. How do you get people to work on active labs? How do you ensure that your instructors are talking to them and teaching them online as to how can they be effective in the real life scenario? Essentially, we're all working to recreate the training room online, and how can that be more related to their day-to-day job profiles and project work. So that's the third gap that we see, which is the model of delivery, and we're working very hard and innovating in that area from an EdTech industry point of view.
Thank you, Ritesh, for that. So let's move on. We all have spoken about the significance of upskilling for workforce to deal with the ever-changing, volatile work environment. But is budget, return on investment, a problem? What has been your strategy of maximizing and optimizing upskilling budget? Let's hear from Vishwanath.
Yeah, so when in the recent times, let's say the post COVID and now the post-COVID era, Hexaware made a very conscious choice, despite all the difficulties and the troubled times we could see coming. We said one thing we will not do is to reduce even $1 of our spend on learning. Obviously, it was an intuitive decision. We didn't really know how long this is going to stay, what other implications it would have. But very clearly, there were telltale signs from the customers as well as internally that learning has two things have to hold priority. One is the health and safety, and second is learning. Therefore, from a pure resource commitment point of view, we only enhanced our commitment to budget for learning. Of course, I must also mention it came in a slightly different form. Earlier, it was more broad-based investment, but we focused that investment. We made it very, very specific to what was coming in areas that we believe were important. For example, we put in a lot of money actually running hackathons, tech hackathons in the last 6 months, and we can confidently today say that some very interesting product ideas and service ideas are actually an outcome of those investments. And those investments were not just in terms of a traditional hackathon, but also supporting with learning, which Hexavarsity did. So two changes we made. One, we made the investment very specific and focused. And second, we were more, if I may call so, more rigorous than we were before in aligning it to where the biggest bang for the buck will come. So these are two directional changes we made in the way learning resources were employed in the last about 8-9 months.
Thank you, Vishwanath. Maya?
Okay, so interestingly, right, one of the I mean, few years, 2-3 years back, when I was preparing for the budget session, no, I said we need X million, and the budget that was kind of discussed was like almost 1/4 of it. I said, with this we cannot do anything. Then, no, the CFO at that time, no, he said, okay, we'll give you 100 million. What will you do with that? That's when it really hit me that you can spend as much as you want and provide everything to the employees, but at the heart of it, they need to find the time to invest in their skilling, not for that knowledge. It's to skill for the proficiency, where you can solve a customer problem or transform a business, and that comes at a huge motivation, inspiration that employees should have, and for that there is no budget value you can put. So if you were to ask about budget, I think large organization like Vishwanath said, there is never a compromise on providing the right learning architecture and learning materials or learning infra for the employees. That, I think, there is never a compromise that I'm hearing these days. So you ask for something, you get almost the same or a little more, and say that, okay, you do it and show the results. Now, coming to the results, it could be how much of lateral recruitment you reduced because of that investment. Like I said, no skilling for a demand. How much of a pipeline have you built, which means that, okay, if there are 100 proposals you win for these skill areas, then you can fulfill almost 50% of it because you have built a supply. So those are, if you are able to prove that continuously, then you'll get more money. That's how business works. So I think budget is not a big issue when it comes to a tech economy itself per se.
Really?
Ritesh is hearing that and he's looking very pleased. Shraddhanjali, what about you?
I think they've spoken about it. I think there's no shortage of money. I mean, the newer skills are going to take you to a very different paradigm. We all understand that. But it's that journey, the steps that we need to take is what we need to strengthen. So if somebody tells me, we have an official saying at SAP is bring everything you are and become everything you want. It's an official employee value proposition. So it's out there that I'm saying, come in with whatever skills. You will have something on the table. Let's have a conversation, as Srikanth said, hyper-personalize it to what your strengths are, what your aspirations are, where there's value in the business model, and we will help you. So I'll give you an ROI answer to this, right? I'll give you some numbers that may be of interest to you. If people stay within the organization, move to a better skill, move to a higher role, so not just vertically, but to something that's more value adding, our attrition numbers have been lower single digit for years now. because this is not a place you come in. This is a place you build a career in. And that's been a dream that we want to call out as SAP, right? So that's to me the business case for upskilling. Not just that, a multi-directional career path, right? Multiple experiences, multiple technology exposure. What it does to the perspective when you're building a product is exceptional. So, as front runners of ERP, we were very proud of the fact that my developers had 20 years of functional experiences, right? Somebody who was making a product for oil and gas actually was in that business for many years. In spite of that, today, when you look at it, I just don't need that. I need that person to have multiple exposures. And then the perspective that goes on, and that's the dimension changing, I think Vishwanath, Maya, even Ritesh spoke about, was how do you take it to the next level? So we think it will happen from learning, but also applying learning. And if you can allow that within your population, there is no war for talent in that sense. You can address, if you make people learn, if you give them a reason to learn and they try to, you can really address and improve your business opportunity. So that's, to us, very, very clear. It's an environment to nurture and foster on the basis of skilling.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Shraddhanjali. Shrikant?
Yeah, I think there are no dearth of metrics. Maya covered few, and I know pretty well. So is Vishwanath in the services industry. There are some thousands of metrics out there. The point is, which one do you choose? She talked about reduction in external recruitment, the dynamics of bench movement, how many bench people are getting trained and getting deployed, upward mobility of billing rates, customer satisfaction, you name it. And the point here is, how do you capture? The perennial problem is, how do you capture all the data, which is where I go back to my platformization. If you have a common platform, we talked about TalentNext, which has a dynamics of every time which skill is moving fast, who's learning what. So you have it at an individual level, and congregating or aggregating this data into various metrics is not a tough task at all. The question is making intelligent decisions out of those metrics. That's more important, and I think that's a critical piece. We see tremendous gains, as I already mentioned, in terms of both billability, revenue growth, and so on and so forth through our TalentNext platform. One interesting point I want to leave with is on the cost ROI. The other ways is the amount of money spent on curating, including user experience. We do a lot, because I said it's a Netflix of training. How do you navigate the platform, and how easily do you use it is a very important metric for us. The important element that I noticed to bring the costs down, peer-to-peer learning. If you're really let loose, there are a lot of experts in your company, not just the L&D department. There are a lot of good guys out there who know what they're doing. Asking them to even take out a small video of their own, what they have done. It could be a code, it could be an architecture, it could be a design, it could be a POC they created. Put it on the video, put it onto the platform, and look at, it's like any Facebook thing. How many likes are there? How many people are adapting to it? And incentivize the guy. That's a much more effective than instructor-led, web-based, internet-led training than any others. So if you can drive that, the adoption of peer-to-peer learning is huge. Your costs will come down, your returns will be high. Yeah.
Okay, Ritesh is on the other side. So let's hear from Ritesh. What does he think about?
Which side is he in?
Yes. So you were
He's the
right. It
provider.
did bring us.
We are the users.
He's on our side. Okay.
Absolutely. And it did bring a smile to my face when you all said that, budgets are not a constraint. But, on a serious note, I agree. I think for all large organizations, I don't think money is ever the issue. I think it's about wisely spending that money and delivering the value for that organization, right? And as large organizations, even when we speak to them, sometimes our advice is there are hundreds of players in the market who can probably help them and work with them and provide them solutions. But the choice of the partners that they work with or how trainings are delivered is so crucial in terms of building a culture within the organization, a culture of learning. And Shrikant just touched upon a very important point, that peer-to-peer learning sometimes can be more important than externally driven training or learning. So let me just say, what kind of innovations we are seeing in this area. Number one is, I frequently advise some organizations which are not necessarily learning or training organizations but sometimes also knowledge management players. There are even organizations like Stack Overflow, which are doing tremendous work in terms of sharing code and capturing that kind of information. I think there is scope for training and learning organizations to get integrated with organizations like Stack, with knowledge management systems, and then basically making a trainer out of every individual in large IT organizations. So I think that's one clear area that we need to focus on. The other, and that's a very cost-effective way of looking at upskilling people. The other thing is, I think players need to, and this is a comment specifically on the EdTech industry, players in the EdTech industry and within the training space, I feel need to get out of this, per individual training spend model and focus more on working with large organizations to develop transformation programs. I think we are entering an era where content is highly commoditized, training content, and co-creating programs, being a part of, let's say, the university or the academy that Dr. Vishwanath spoke about, getting embedded in those arenas is where real learning and transformation can happen. So these are just some thoughts that I have, but I think clearly there is scope for commercial models to transform. And we are also advising some organizations on changes that can be driven on the commercial model front, so that ROIs, etc., can be more clearly visible. The rest of the points were covered by the other panelists. So
yeah, thank you, Ritesh. I think we just have time for one or two anecdotes on how to make the learners, how to make your workforce want to learn. So what are your tricks in your bags about motivating employees for continuous learning, especially if you can share something about Generation Z, because they are entering the workforce in large numbers. Are they keen about learning, and do they have attention span to go on for longer learning programs? I leave it on any one of you to share. Who would like
Maybe
to
I
go?
can start. I
Okay,
can
sure.
start, and everybody else can add. I think a little bit was spoken about, but it's really interesting. I mean, I'm so glad of the generation coming in, because they're making us rethink and reimagine the way we're delivering trainings. I must tell you, there are parts of a 3-day training that I like, right? Being in a room with people, but that's not possible. Let's look at this year. I'll give you an anecdote that happened with us. So, like I think every panelist spoke about, there's a curation from my L&D team of what are the skills, what are the learnings that we would really like Gen X, Gen Ys, millennials coming in to do. We kept pushing it from the HR front, and I can tell you the intake was bare minimal, right? So some people were kind to us. They said, fine, we will do it. Then the managers would go behind people, the carrot and the stick approach.
Yeah.
Then we went back and said, this is ridiculous, right? Why are people not seeing value in this? We took a step back, and the reason I'm sharing this out with the audience is we called the group of 15 people who were supposed to be in the category of people who should ideally be there taking this training. We said, you tell us how to do this, right? They went through, they came out, I mean, they went through it. They said, you really want us to do it? We said, yeah, please do it. Be kind to us, whatever. They came back and they said, this part of the training is crap. Literally, not mincing words. And they were very, very clear. They said, this is what we enjoyed, this is what we didn't enjoy, and give us the empowerment to design it for my peers. This is a real life example where 15 of them got together. We told them what objective we wanted, and we gave them entire access as any L&D, top-notch professional in this country would have. They put something together, and that intake, you will not believe, was so social. Within a weekend, I had 250 people who had done it, right? Obviously, it was smaller, modular content and so on and so forth, but that was a very hard-cut learning. I think Shrikant spoke about it. This peer-to-peer, a community learning, there is immense value, and I don't think we've really leveraged that potential. So one is, you have to create platforms where the learnings are available. You'll have to really look at micro learnings, nudge behaviors. Nudge behavior is another great example I want to share with you. I think there's always this conversation, it takes 21 days to form a habit, you need to do it for the next period of time. But I think in today's world where you're overdosed with information, where your inboxes are filled with emails, you need additional support systems that will be the beacon on a dark night, right? So you need smaller behaviors either coming from the system or from your leadership or from your peer or from your community that are helping re-emphasize what's important. And we've done, very small practices within the HR community. I'm sure most organizations have Learning Wednesday, Learning Friday, all of that stuff. But we kind of made it into projects. So people put their hand up, they said they want to work on it, and we gave them internal and external exposure. So that's a little bit about how you can go about it. But I do not agree. Attention spans may be varying, but that has given us the opportunity to redesign EdTech in that sense, right? So I think that's all in good humor and good faith, and community learning will really take us to the next level.
Thank you, Shraddhanjali, for sharing those wonderful points. So we've got the audience question, and the first question is for Maya. So this person wants to know, what are the 3 skills that your organization would train their employees on in the next 1 to 2 quarters?
Like you said, there is no single 3-skill name, right? We work with like thousands of skills. That's why that whole skill taxonomy itself is like every day evolving. So it depends on the area you are in. So we call it as a core and an adjacency. So if I'm working on Java, you need to become a full stack engineer, which means you need to know Hibernate, Spring MVC, SQL database. So your goal should be to develop on your adjacency skills, and so that you become a full stack engineer, whichever area you're in. So if you're in SAP, I'm sure Shraddhanjali, or let me not take SAP with Shraddha there. No, take any area for that matter. The skills will differ. So I cannot say 3 skills, but everybody, I'm saying that you should know AI and data literacy, right? To understand data, connect the dots, just looking at the data and connecting the dots. So if I can recommend 3 skills that everybody should know, like Satya Nadella says, AI is the new electricity. So everybody needs to have that 1-inch depth in AI. Second is everybody should know how to analyze data and connect the dots, data literacy, that I say. Third is cloud. And cloud is not just cloud per se, right? Whether it's AWS, Azure, or Google Cloud, integrated cloud development, because everything is built on cloud. So these are the 3 for anyone in a technology industry aspiring to stay relevant for the future. These 3 are like mandatory 1-inch depth you should build at a proficiency level 2.
Thank you, Maya, for answering that question. The next question is for Vishwanath. What is the expectation from tech companies in soft skills and tech skills space?
All right. So I think tech skills Maya has pretty much covered. Being a services company for us, these 3 exactly are the priorities from a tech skills development point of view. I would add one more dimension to it. No longer can anybody be irrelevant even from a domain context, because we increasingly find that clients do business with technology professionals who also understand the business processes. And I've kept hearing about this in my career for more than 20 years now, but I think that's becoming more and more important. So knowing domain, knowing business, at least some key business processes of client organizations that you're serving is going to be more significant. On the soft skills side, I think there are 3 or 4, but I'll talk about 3 very, very important aspects that I find are becoming important. One is obviously the client centricity. And that's again easier said than done, because what does it mean to really move from a tech focus to a client focus? And therefore, in what you do and the way you do it, are you keeping client at the center of your activities? So just learning how to be client centric. One. Second, collaboration skills. And today collaboration is not just about sitting together in one common space, right? Collaboration is multicultural, multilingual, across time zones, especially when we don't sit together at one place.
Obedient.
So collaboration is
If
going
you're
to be
told
one
not to, you should stick to it. Go leave it on the tree. No, you have an angel and a star. What more you want here?
Okay. some more skills being taught.
Yeah.
And the third one, I think, is more from the point of view of learning, the learnability that I talked about. I think learnability has more soft element than hard element to it. So I would say client centricity, collaboration, and ability to learn. These are three soft skills that Exaware is, of course, focused on, but I think by and large, professionals from the industry are also talking about the same. And not just technology, I have opportunities to meet a lot of managers from non-technology areas as a part of my executive education programs that I contribute in. So I meet managers from manufacturing, banking, retail companies, and this is what I keep hearing from them also in terms of what is becoming the priority.
Thank you, Shrikant. So Maya shared with us the skills that one needs to learn in the next 1 or 2 quarters, but another audience wants to know which are the skills that one need to focus for the next 1 to 2 years. So let's talk about, skills that will trend after a couple of years. Shrikant, can you take that? Shrikant, you are in mute.
All right. Thank you. Maya touched upon the three very critical skills. I mean, that's something which is industry-wide. Cloud, but again, cloud is broken down into cloud infrastructure, cloud migration in between, and of course, hybrid cloud. That's what we call it. So it's not just Azure or AWS. It could be some applications sitting there and some applications sitting there. So cross hybrid cloud skills are important. AI data skills, I'll call it data skills, including data management, data lakes. How do you get the data together and how do you make intelligence out of it? One skill, if you're talking about 2 to 3 years horizon, this even I didn't believe would be a skill which would be quickly evolving. But I do believe quantum machine learning in the next 2 to 3 years. Now, I'm hazarding a guess, is going to be a very critical skill which is going to be playing a role. You already see in AWS some quantum platform where you can try the machine learning, quantum machine learning by itself. Some of the experiments that you can do. So that's something that is going to come up. Cybersecurity for sure is going to explode in my view. That's an important skill, which is, in fact, when Maya talked about full stack, it is the front end, back end, and the middle. But also there's going to be, in fact, they call it DevSecOps. So you have security, ops, and development, all three put together. And that's an important feature, not just DevOps, but DevSecOps. So for me, in summary, cloud by itself is going to remain for next 2 to 3 years and explode. Cybersecurity and I believe quantum computing, if you want to use a bigger term than quantum machine learning. These are the three things which are going to be,
Thank you,
coming in
Shrikant,
pretty fast. Yeah.
for taking us 2 years in future. Ritesh, the next question is for you. One of the main challenges, what you have seen or what you've experienced when you train freshers. So, the ones who just come out of college and they are full of ideas and theory. So what are the challenges you see in training them for the professional world?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. See, a large part of our effort goes towards training freshers as the edtech industry. The challenges are the following. Number one, organizations like to begin training freshers while they're still on campus, on college campuses. Right? That's a huge cost saving for organizations before people are even on their payroll. Second, I believe it develops a bond with the organization for freshers way in advance before they come in. So it's a great opportunity for them to not just learn skills, but also learn a little bit about the culture of the organization. And they also appreciate the fact that the organization is investing in them. So I think it strengthens that bond. The challenge is they're all geographically spread, right? They're all different campuses. They're geographically spread. Their computing environments are very different. Their own baseline of skills is very different. So, while they may be going through computer engineering, for example, but the baseline skills on core full stack could be very, very varied. So that's another challenge, the variance in the skill levels. So, we regularly run programs for organizations where we start by baselining these skills, then skilling them upwards. We take care of the entire pain that an organization has to go through while managing people remotely. So yeah, freshers is an interesting area. Also, it gives the organizations an opportunity to, in a way, profile the candidate before they come into the organization, right? So I think a lot of AI and a lot of behavioral analytics, particularly, can be put to play while analyzing profiles of individuals. Where do they need help? Which are the areas they're a little weak on? Where do they need to put in more work? What about discipline? So all of those things are now possible if you start interacting with freshers early on, and we regularly do that at scale for large organizations.
Thank you, Ritesh, for that. Would anybody else like to share something on this point? Shraddhanjali?
No, all good. Very well covered.
Can I
Okay.
add a point?
Yeah, please, Maya.
So in Cognizant, no, I head the fresher program as well. That's a new role that I've got, end-to-end recruitment to training to deployment. So interesting that you're asking this question. And to me, we announced that we are taking 23,000. So imagine companies like us take 20,000 plus freshers from campus. So what I see as the biggest gap in them is the ability to learn is very less. Everything is about pass or fail. So at scale, when you have to develop them on Java, .NET, or big data, informatics, any skill, they have to invest their time in learning. But because of the education system has taken them to a point where they cannot think of learning. So when you go around, all the questions are about how to get the question bank, how will the questions be, how can I pass, how can I pass. I think that if we can change a little earlier in the college, that's what I'm trying to do with the engineering colleges as well, saying that don't have this pass-fail mechanism. The ability to learn is going in. That I feel as one of the biggest challenges. But like Shraddha said, they're all wanting to solve business problems. They all want to jump in and transform customers. But then that ability to learn, that all that is coming in their way. Second is everybody wants to be in the cutting edge technology. In a day, you won't believe, I'm not exaggerating here, minimum 10 of this campus grads who have joined will write to me saying that I want to move from X skill to everybody wants to move to AI or analytics or IoT, everybody. But then I have to tell them that you have 40 years to swim in technology. You have to build the depth in some of the legacy areas as well. And it's very difficult to convince them, because from the college, what they see here is about the technology transformation, the new skills. They don't believe that Java, there is so much of demand, but that's the biggest demand sometimes we have. So I think that shifting that readiness to college, telling them that first 3 years is all about building some breadth and depth, foundation, make your foundation more stronger, and then aspire in the meantime to be ready for the future. Today, I think that's a change I would like to bring from a fresher program perspective.
So Pooja,
that's a great point, Maya. And I should have added this while talking about freshers and fresher onboarding. In fact, we realized this while working with freshers on college campus, that what if we took our programs to freshers while they're in their final year, right? So now we've started working not just with organizations, but also with colleges. So we work with about 100 plus colleges where we take our programs on all of these new edge skills like AI, machine learning, big data, and cybersecurity and others, and basically tell final year graduates that your career chances can be furthered, and you have an opportunity to work with these august organizations should you invest your time and energy in upskilling yourself on these areas. So preparing them while they're still on campus is a great point that Maya just brought up, and that should be a part of every fresher's journey.
I think just a very quick point there. I think I completely agree with Maya. Can you hear me, or am I on mute again?
No, we can hear you.
Can hear you.
Yeah, the only point I was making is, I know. I just unmuted. So excellent point Maya made, and that's something that across the industry we do face it. The only difference is, again, when you curate a program, when you talk about data science, the fundamentals of statistics, there's everything called a foundation. When you talk about a full stack, there's a foundation in Java is required. When you talk about security, again, the fundamentals of coding or data structures is very important that you got. So somewhere down the line, if you really can educate him on the fundamentals and even if quantum machine learning, we don't know how to build an algorithm, you can't go onto the quantum computing. The fundamentals remain the same. So that's something that I mean, there's an anecdote. When you have the foundational level and linkages to the so-called advanced language, we keep talking AI, machine learning, and so on. But if they're able to link up the foundational courses, that these are the things, if you learn, you'll be good at this, does help. I know it's not a only answer, but it connecting the dots is pretty critical. That's all. That's a point I just want to make.
Yeah, and I think one aspect that I would like to leave L&D professionals on this forum with, and I'm sure each one of us on the speaker panel will also agree with me, and I think we also struggle with it sometimes. While it's easy to talk about learning how to learn, it's also important that our L&D professionals also learn how to teach. I think that's also going through a major change right now, and that's not just technology, but how do we, if we are in a role where we are imparting knowledge, then how do we impart that knowledge to the kind of workforce that's coming in with all the unique characteristics and of course the pressure of environment, does also require us to reflect on, are we equipped to help them learn in a manner that they want to learn so that they can grasp it quickly and of course perform on the job. So that's I think a very difficult for all of us as L&D professionals to reflect on. And I do see that there is a need to get better there.
Thank you, Vishwanath, for this. Would anybody like to share anything?
No, maybe just as closing comments, Pooja, I think there's incredible opportunity out there. The world is in your hands. You don't have to look at career ladders. You have an opportunity to go across technologies, across experiences. There are companies who are investing, who are laying out red carpets for you. I mean, there couldn't be a better time to be. I'm saying that as I'm smiling, both for everybody in this profession of learning and wanting to learn. It's that internal passion and fire that you need to keep alive, right? The building of a resilience is important. So you're not going to get to 20,000 Instagram likes on a training program done. I think you need to lead it to a business value. I think that is a little bit of mindset shift that needs to happen. But it couldn't be a better time to wanting to learn and with all the opportunities coming your way.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's a great positive note. I always tell people that this is akin to the early 80s of when computers and computing basically started and the opportunities it opened up. And so all of these nascent areas that we've talked about today, including digital skills, this is such a tremendous opportunity. And Shraddha, that's a great positive note as a closing comment. I think it's a wonderful time for people to just invest in themselves and then grow and embrace new opportunities.
Great.
So first, I would like to thank the audience for being here. I'm sure you all are richer today and more motivated to go up there, learn, and do your very best. Thank you for being here. We could not take all your questions because of time constraint, but we did try and help you out with as many insights we could. So thank you for being here. Thank you, panelists, for being here for this discussion. And this has been a very enriching conversation, a lot of takeaways for all of us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sparing time for ETHR World and great learning discussion on upskilling in sector, a strategic approach.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all for the opportunity.
Pleasure. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.